nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds. This is my first podcast. I'm super excited to start this, and we will be talking to people that work with data and understand how they work with data, what their definition of data even is, and just learn some fun bits. So with the first episode that we have, I asked my husband, Tristan Royal, to please come and help me out do the first episode. So, Tristan, tell us about yourself.
My name is Tristan. I am a programmer. My main languages are Python and C#. I've been working at this for 10, 12 years, something like that, a long time. And I like to say that I'm pretty good and I know a thing or two.
Nice. What is your origin story? I like to understand people's origin stories. Fancy word for what's your background? How did you get to where you are today?
It depends on how far you want to go back. I mean, I got into Python and programming in general. Basically, I got an electrical engineering degree, and I interned at a satellite modem communications company, and we had to test the modem software. And basically, my first day, they sat me down and they said, "This is Python. Learn it." So sink or swim, pretty much. Just learn it or else, I guess. I don't know. And that kind of lit a fire under me, and I liked it so much, and I moved on to test automation after that, and eventually I'm here a senior dev now at my current position.
Nice. Would you advise kind of that same road to others, like kind of like the sink or swim thing?
No, that's not for everyone. No, that is not for everyone. A lot of people get flabbergasted at the amount of knowledge, especially with no kind of point of reference. Like right now, I know at least a programming language. For me to learn a second programming language is pretty simple, but without the foundation for the first one, it's daunting. It's pretty intimidating. So no, I would definitely not recommend the sink or swim style of learning.
Okay. And how is the sink or swim different than when you enter into like a startup? Because I know that's where you kind of learned a lot of your background and where you are today. You really enjoyed that experience.
So yeah, it's exactly sink or swim. Because if you can't do it in the company, and there's no one else in the room full of 8 people that you're sitting in, that it can't be done. You know what I mean? Unless one of you guys figures it out. So yeah, that is applied sink or swim. That's the entire life of a startup.
Yeah.
I happen to work well in that type environment. I don't think I'm typical. I could be wrong, but I'm not everybody else, so I don't know about them. But yeah, it's just high impact. Learn all the things, apply all the things, research all the new stuff. It's intense, and I wouldn't recommend that unless you're financially stable to begin with.
That is a good point. You're just starting out, so you don't have that many bills and all that jazz. And also, it sounds like it needs to be your cup of tea. You need to be driven, be able to do things on your own without that much guidance and all of that. So
yeah, doing it on your own. That's kind of a thing that we lost a lot of people that weren't able to do things on their own. They had to be told what to do. Yep. And that kind of mindset doesn't really fly in a in a startup type environment.
That makes a lot of sense. So today, what is your official title and your main role and responsibility at where you work?
I think it's just senior Python developer or senior developer. I'm not entirely sure. I do only Python at work. Well, I can't say that, but yeah, that's basically what I do. I'm Python senior developer, whatever you want to call me, some combination of those three words. Yeah, and my responsibilities, I do a lot of Django work, which is a Python framework for web pages, but I mainly do back end. So I'm designing and making APIs so that the front end can consume them. It is sort of a glorified plumber job, in the sense that I take data from one location, wrap it up into a neat bow, and send it through the pipe over to front end. So front end grabs it and displays it on the web page or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's basically what my roles are right now. Not to mention any of the back end stuff like AWS and Google Cloud Project, all that stuff. But
yeah, I've never been a data engineer myself, but I've worked with data engineers, and it sounds kind of similar, where they build and work with APIs to get data from one point to the other. Would you say that's similar? Or I don't know how many data engineers you've interfaced with.
Well, I make the API.
Okay.
So I am the connection between the front end and the database. So the front end doesn't want to call out whatever SQL or NoSQL commands to access the information from the database, because that would expose all kinds of goodies for hackers inside of the actual web page. They want to have a layer that separates those two things, and I am that layer. So all the authentication goes through me, and I am the one that accesses whatever database or CMS or anything like that needs to be grabbed. And then I, like I said, package it, put a bow on it, and send it back up to front end.
Nice. Very cool. The conductor, like a orchestra conductor, train conductor. Because you're moving.
More like things. A train conductor. I'm definitely not waving any sticks around. Maybe doing this every once in a while, but
nice. Very cool. So talking about data, how would you define data?
For me, it's basically anything in a table, a database table of some sort, or a NoSQL JSON type object that just contains stuff that somebody or someone else wants. I don't do much of the traditional data practices. Like, I don't usually have to worry about cleaning my data or even really sanitizing my data, because most of the stuff that we use is not free form. So I don't have to worry about pesky customers entering zany stuff to try to hack the database, for lack of a better term.
But so do you have like drop downs or is it like the radio buttons, or how is that not freeform?
Yeah, so for a lot of it, we will actually give the illusion of it being a freeform, and then just kind of force it into an actual drop down. So it's a drop down on the back end, but on the front end, it might look like just a free-form text. But since it's something like, what country are you from? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's only so many possible things someone can enter. They can't enter a country that doesn't exist, because that wouldn't make sense. So we just know that if they typed in this, they mean United States, or whatever.
Interesting. So wait, does that mean, so if somebody enters in United States and they misspell it, so there's some kind of thing in the middle that transforms that and then inputs it as United States correctly?
Kind of yes and kind of no. The front, this is more of a front end thing. This is not something that I particularly handle, but I do know that they have packages. Like Google provides packages that will actually do that type of thing for you based on things like fuzzy logic and all that. So it's kind of like a glorified spell check, but it only spell checks against these words in this particular file or whatever. So like all your countries, for example, are on one file. And if someone types in UNITOD states or whatever, it's going to be like, yeah, you probably meant United States, you know?
Okay. Do they?
That's not really my responsibility, but yeah.
And no, but this is really interesting to me. So you obviously, or I'm guessing that they can't have it enter like just a space, like a blank, right? There's probably parameters.
Yeah, we actually had that happen in testing, and then we had to patch that out real quick because it was actually getting through, and that was no fun.
All right. Nice. So a lot of those are kind of stuff that you fix as they come along.
Yeah. So the front end and back end, we have like our little contract between each other. Like when I ask you to send me this, you send it to me like that. And so we are kind of like the final say when it comes to what is put into the database or CMS and how it's taken out of the CMS. So we do very little actual cleaning on things. Little stuff here and there, like if there is a free form field, like for example, a customer's first name, we'll check it for swears or whatever, curse words, and remove that or throw errors or whatever when they try to submit it. Things like that.
Very cool. And I'm guessing that there's some kind of corpus that you use to check against for those swears and such.
Yeah, we use the one, I believe it is the NLTP, Natural Language Processing Toolkit, whatever that stands for. We use the one that's provided in there, and we really only used the last one that we did. We really only used the English one because we had it was a predominantly English speaking conference, but if we had implemented all of the languages, we would have ran into a weird issue where some words in other languages are curse words, but in English they are just regular words, and it's basically impossible to determine which one they intended on writing. I mean, we could have done a little bit extra and like did NLP on the entire sentence or something like that and be like, oh, this guy's speaking Vietnamese, so if he says these Vietnamese curse words, then we'll bleep them. But that was kind of like out of scope because it wasn't really considered that much of a potential problem. So we basically just edited out English curse words.
Okay.
Some of them were very creative.
Interesting.
We even added something on there so that people couldn't use leet speak to actually write curse words. So it actually
and what is that for the audience?
Leet speak. This is my age being shown. Leet stands for elite. If you write it out in leet speak, it's 31337. It's supposed to represent ELITE, but people shorten it to leet. It's just like script kiddie hacker stuff from the early aughts and late 90s.
Okay.
But yeah, we so like replacing letters with numbers, like an A might become a 4 or a 3. I mean, an E might become a 3. But yeah, we actually wrote a program so that could actually check all the swears and also reference all of them versus their leet speak, because people often use that to try to bypass chat filters. So yeah.
Interesting. Now, is that something that was part of that package, the corpus, or is that's something that you guys had to build in? Interesting. I'm wondering actually if that exists already, because there's like hackers use something and they have to have that involved because, you know, people throw in 3s and 4s and whatnot into their passwords.
Yeah, it probably exists, but it's also sort of trivial to write. We didn't do much research on if it existed. Otherwise, we probably just would have used something. But it's not. It's not a complex problem to solve.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Very interesting. Speaking of solving problems, what type of problems do you solve with data at your job?
What type of problems do I solve with data at my job?
I mean, we talked about some already where you're using fuzzy logic so that people can enter in what they need to as far as like the countries and whatnot.
I learned that the state Massachusetts is MA. That's its abbreviation. There is also about, I want to say, 2 other states on Earth that also use the abbreviation MA. And that is a problem that we encountered when people were entering their location, because Boston, Massachusetts is very different than, I don't remember what country it was. Let's call it Bolivia. Than Bolivia MA. So it's a very big difference. So we were tying our country, and we weren't tying our country and our state to each other. And the CMS that we were using had 2 separate MAs in it. One MA was associated with the United States, and the other MA was associated with a completely different country that I didn't know had an MA. And that just makes it difficult to look at when you're just navigating through it. It could have impacted, but we caught that pretty early because it was throwing errors when we were trying to just like pick that random country and put MA after it, because that's not a possible combination. So I don't know if that really answers that question.
No, it does. Yeah, that's totally a problem that needed to be solved. And yeah, that reminds me of something that I ran into, where you know how when you configure tables to only store like numbers or letters strictly, and so we had zip codes, and I only know zip codes to have numbers, right? I didn't know like places like Canada have letters in their zip codes. So that's not a thing that could be done. And I was completely thrown off when I found that out.
That tripped me out the first time that I used to work pairs and schedules for a bus station. And the first time I saw a Canadian zip code, I'm like, what is that? I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, so to transition into our fun bits, I'm calling it fun bits for now. I'll think of a cooler word for it, phrase. So our fun segment, I want to talk about favorite superheroes and why you think that they would or would not do well in an office job. So I'll go first. My favorite superhero is Spider-Man. And I think that he would be terrible at an office job because he would reach for papers and whatnot, and just webs would go out, and it would just be a complete and utter mess. Yeah.
Let me see here. So I literally have Batman on my wallpaper right now.
Nice.
Let's see. What would Batman do? Batman wouldn't work in the mailroom. I mean, he's a CEO, so that means he doesn't actually do work. Yeah, I can't see him doing any actual work.
Would he be able to delegate though, with his like stern voice?
I don't know. I mean, he does a good job of being the patriarch of the Bat family. So I mean, he gives orders and whatnot. So he probably would be a decent manager. I wouldn't, maybe even a trainer. I mean, he's got a few. He's trained a few in his day.
I mean, he doesn't kill people though anymore, like he's
So actually you're right. He'd be a
so
horrible manager.
I was thinking the opposite. He'd be good. He's trying to he's not going to kill you per se. He'll rough you up a bit, but he won't kill you.
Let's see. Obviously, yeah, Tony Stark, throw him in the R&D department, let him do his thing over there. He's money over there.
Yes. What do you think? What do you think he would be good at? Like his first job? What do you think he'd invent?
Oh, he definitely delivered newspapers. For sure. He delivered newspapers. He went outside of his pops too. He just rolled up to the newspaper stand. I don't know how this works anymore because it's 2023. But he rolled on his own and was like, let's go get this money.
Okay.
As I'm saying, even without being an R&D weapons manufacturer, he's obviously always been about his money.
Yeah. But that's like Baby Stark, right? It's not
Baby
Adult Stark.
Adult Stark, I mean, like I said, throw him in the R&D department. He's good there. He'll come up with a new JavaScript package or some BS. I don't know. But let's talk about Hawkeye though. What would Hawkeye do?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No.
No Hawkeye love at all?
Not even a little bit. No. I was thinking Bruce Banner, he'd also be terrible because he'd just get too frustrated and Hulk out.
I think Hawkeye would probably be an Uber driver. I could see him doing Uber Eats, not Uber driving people, but delivering food. For some reason, I could see him doing that, and being really good at it. 5 stars. And all
would he just set up the food on the bow and just from the car?
I mean, if I woke up, or I'm not woke up, but if I'm ordering food and all of a sudden my door gets hit by an arrow and there's cheeseburgers hanging from it, I'm gonna tip. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Especially if he hit the door and not the window. Yeah, I like that. Any other ones you can think of?
Let's see what else. I mean, you got obvious ones. You throw Aquaman on a boat and he's a fisherman. Okay, cool. He can talk to the fish and have him jump in the boat and be like, I got free candy or fish candy or whatever. And and then the fish jump in the boat. But that's all I can come up with that. What, you got Magneto working at the steel mill?
Oh gosh, no.
Well, I mean, we got to assume that he's just working 9 to 5. He doesn't have evil, nefarious deeds planned here. He's just trying to make a living.
Yeah.
So I'd throw him at the steel mill.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or any kind of manufacturing. In fact, make him work him at GM or something. Have him put together.
Oh yes.
Cars.
That's a perfect one. Awesome.
And you can have Wolverine at the destruction part where they take apart cars.
They could do, work together. Now, thank you so much for the fun bits. That was fun. So now to wrap it up, my last question for you is, how do you like to learn new things?
I'm probably the horriblest person to ask this question because I am so about that documentation life. Give me the documentation, let me get in, and then just that's where it's at.
Yes, you have no idea how many people that I've seen on LinkedIn recently. They're like, please, people, document your work. Documentation.
No, it's not just documenting your work. It's more if I'm trying to learn a new package, straight to the official documentation.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going first. I'm chilling there for a while. I'm using that to mess around and then try to, and then if I'll use Stack Overflow or whatever other web resource that I need in order to fill in the gaps. But official documentation, when done well, is done well.
Yes.
There's a bunch of examples where it's not exactly the best thing to look at and it's not as helpful as you would like it to be. But when done well, top notch, and would highly recommend it.
Yes, I as well. I always think of it like document for your future self, like, because you're going to revisit the work that you did. And it's just easier if you have that already documented and you can like pick up where you started off.
I agree.
And then also for other people, right?
I agree 100% because I absolutely hate past Tristan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a regular developer, so that means I'm not consistent at writing documentation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a meme, a trope amongst my people.
Yeah.
And we don't do that.
Yeah. Well, then you have something to improve upon. Goals 2023 # documentation life.
I don't know about all that.
Oh.
It's a wishful thinking.
Yes. Mini goals. How about that? All right. Well, any last words, recommendations, encouragements for the listeners out there?
If you don't know Python, go learn it. It'll help you out in life. That's it.
All right. And where can the listeners go to find you? Ask questions.
Basically, this room.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, I guess you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I am not a social media person. I'm on Reddit a lot, but that's it. Yeah, LinkedIn works, I suppose.
All right. Well,
just find her. You could find me.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Tristan, for helping me out and being on my first episode.
And thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. All right. Well, I'll wrap it up in a more formal fashion once I figure out bells and whistles. But as always, folks, happy learning.